Hey everyone. Hello, welcome. Here we are. It is Thursday, and that means it's our last reading of the week. So excited to be with you all. And this is a chapter we've had some excitement going on the last couple of chapters. We had Madeline Oliver has just discovered that the things that she thought were true were not, and that she has been participating in the destruction of a young girl's life, a young skim girl, and that it's much, much different than what she expected. Meanwhile, Jason has run off into the desert and accidentally got himself engaged to Bailea, a young Cockry woman. So it's there's a lot of excitement there as well. Okay, people are starting to show up and say hello. Tim says, hey, Tim. Patrick says, happy Thursday. Happy Thursday to you. Glad to see you. Neil says, hi, Mr. Matt. Hello, Neil. Good to see you. Hey, did your book show up yet? Let me know if it hasn't. Have your mom send me a note. It should have shown up by now. Lily Me says, hello. Dr. Awesome says, hello. All right. Yep, there's Jonathan. Jonathan is here. Hey, Jonathan. Good to see you. Let's see, who are we missing? The Sims family is usually here. Well, a few others. Oh, Tim says, how are you? I'm doing pretty well. I am working all day, every day to get The Story King done, which is the third book in the Sunlit Land series, which is due on Monday. So that means that I'm literally all day. If I'm not writing, I'm thinking about how I should be. I just finished a chapter about 20 minutes ago, so I am, I think, 5 chapters from the end. But one of those chapters is going to be enormous. So that's not necessarily a good indication of how much is left. Probably another 20,000 words to write before Monday, something like that. So I need to get to work. Let's see. The Sims family says, yesterday's chapter was the best. That is a chapter I love a lot. Caitlin says hello. Oh, Scales family. Okay, that book hasn't arrived. Let me look again. I'll reorder it if I need to. But maybe it'll come today. It should be soon, if not already. Well, obviously not already. Duh. Kirk says, hey. Hello, Kirk. How's it going? Patrick says, yes, The Story King. So exciting. It is exciting. Oh gosh, the chapter I was just writing, I was starting to get creeped out. It's the middle of the day, and I'm the one writing it, and I was like, something. As I was telling my daughter yesterday, something terrible is happening to Shula, and she goes, "What's happening?" And I said, "Do you really want spoilers?" And she said, "No." And I said, "Well, she can't find her socks to put her shoes on," which is not true. But she has her socks; she's fine. Yes, Lily Me says, not to be confused with the Peasant King? That's a good question. All will be answered in time. But yeah, is the Story King the same as the Peasant King? The same as the Majestic One? There are answers. There are answers in book 3 to those questions, for sure. And well, I don't want to say they'll surprise you. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll be exactly what you expected. Okay, chapter 33. Remember, we left Madeline in the heart of the wasted lands, in a skim hovel where she's just discovered that, spoilers if you're just jumping in at the last minute here, she's just discovered that her breath, her magical healing is coming at the expense of a young girl being unable to breathe, a young skim girl. And she's there with Darius, who is well known to the skim, and of course, well known to her ex-boyfriend. And that's where we pick up the story of chapter 33, the Elenil at war. One of the peasant king's followers, a knight in his servants, said to him, "My lord, where are you going?" The peasant king replied, "Why, to meet death. Would you go with me, sir knight?" From The Triumph of the Peasant King, a skim legend. Madeline's tears had stopped. Darius found her staring silently at refuse in the field. He had taken his helmet off. He smoothed his white robes and sat beside her. "The Elenil will come soon," he said. "After our attack on the city, they will respond. You can help Yenel's family, Madeline. How? By throwing away better garbage? You can make sure they aren't harmed. You're a high-value human to the Elenil. They want to make sure your deal is kept. They'll want you happy. Tell them to leave her family alone, and they will." The darkness here was so deep, there were no stars. It was as if a thick cloud layer hovered overhead. "The Elenil don't fight their own battles, Darius. They won't sweep in here and hurt anyone. If anything, they'll send some human soldiers. How many Elenil even died in your attack?" Darius rubbed his jaw. "I haven't spoken to the War Council yet, but no more than 100. They're long-lived, though, and not used to death. Not anymore. You don't know them, Madeline. They'll come. And when they do, it will be to punish our people. We crossed a line by attacking during their holy day. They will make it clear that such a thing cannot happen again." Something stirred within her. It was wrong for the Skim to murder the Elenil. The Skim were in poverty, yes, but why did that make killing others okay? "Darius, you make it sound like the Elenil could come in and wipe out the Skim in a single day." They could. They've taken the Skim's weapons, their most powerful ones anyway. He turned to look at his owl, which had closed its golden eyes, resting perched on a log sticking out of a garbage pile. "Except for the Sword of Years, which I have now. The Elenil have all but enslaved these people by building an economy based on taking from the Skim to empower and enrich the Elenil. The Elenil could crush the Skim in an afternoon if they truly wanted to do so. Then how are they at war?" It didn't make any sense. "They can't destroy the Skim, not completely. Who would be the object of their magic then? Where would their sewage magically disappear to? Madeline, if there is a Skim woman with a beautiful voice, she sells it to the Elenil. If you have talent or ability or anything the Elenil want, you can get ahead. If you're a gifted musician or athlete or artist, for a while, at least. If you don't have those things, you can get a meal maybe, or a roof over your head for a few weeks by giving them some small piece of your life. Healing magic maybe. You take the flu for a week so the Elenil can be healthy. In exchange, 3 days of food. Follow the money, Madeline. When you see this sort of injustice in the world, you always follow the money. Who benefits? Who loses? Then you know what kind of game is being played." It didn't make sense. It was a terrible deal, and she didn't understand how getting a few days of food would be worth being sick for a week. Why would the Skim agree to this? Darius looked embarrassed. He stared into the night for a while. When his eyes met hers, there was a calculation being made, a decision being weighed out. "Okay," he said. "Okay. You know my cousin, Malik?" "Yeah, the one who went away to college last year? Your mom mentioned him." "He's not in college, Madeline. Listen, it goes like this. We start with a private prison somewhere." "A private?" "Contracted. They make a deal with the government, so the government doesn't have to run a prison. It works like this. They make a deal for a bunch of money. The government guarantees a quota, a certain number of inmates a year, or the company won't make money, right?" Madeline shook her head. "What does this have to do with your cousin?" "Just wait for it, Mads. So to meet the quota, a certain number of people have to be arrested. But that's not enough. There aren't enough people. Cops are working hard, but they're not getting enough convictions. So the legislators, they make tighter laws. Then the cops can arrest more people. The judges can put more away. They make mandatory minimum sentences for small crimes so they can fill prison beds. That's a cynical way of looking at things." Darius squeezed her hand. His eyes held something like compassion, but it might have been pity. "It's experience, Mads, not cynicism." He took his hand back. "So, my cousin. He's trying to make ends meet. His mom's in the hospital. His girlfriend's pregnant. He can't get ahead fast enough, even being careful with his money. His friends keep saying he can make good money, fast, if he's willing to sell drugs. He keeps pushing them off. His mom would be furious if she ever found out. He can't risk that, but he knows who to talk to if he decides he needs the money. Madeline could scarcely believe what she was hearing. Did he start selling drugs? No, Darius said, obviously frustrated. No, that's why I'm telling you. He decided not to. Then one day he's hanging out with some of our friends. They're sitting on the sidewalk, just catching up. A police car comes flying out of nowhere up onto the curb. Everyone scatters, and he runs too. Why did he run if he didn't do anything wrong? That's exactly what the cops say. And the thing is, one of his friends, he was holding. He ditched his drugs on the sidewalk. The cops asked my cousin who they belong to, and he knows, but he won't tell them. So they take him in, and they sweat him at the station and try to get him to talk, but he won't give them a name. So they write up the report, and they say the drugs were his. Wait, are you saying they lied? They wanted to bust a dealer, and my cousin was sitting there right where the drugs were found. In the scramble, maybe they thought they were his. Maybe they think that's what really happened. I don't know. But the cops are adamant. The public defender doesn't put up much of a fight, and my cousin goes to jail. He's in jail? In jail, it costs $10 a minute to make a phone call because some company has a monopoly on outgoing calls. Plus, he's doing prison labor, growing produce for some fancy big-name grocery chain. Your cousin was hanging out with drug dealers? Darius, why didn't he just give them a name? Look, he gets paid this tiny bit of money for his work. A lot less than the phone company, the private prison, the grocery chain are making off, and meanwhile his kid is growing up without a daddy. His girlfriend has no money and has to figure out who can take care of the baby so she can work. His mama can't afford the hospital. Some white dude on the television is talking about how my cousin needs to learn to take responsibility for his actions, but meanwhile, he has nothing and never has. He was loyal to his friends. That's his crime. Meanwhile, he's got no safety net, no one to bail him out on rent 1 month. Are you sure he was telling the truth? Darius snorted. Mads, why would he lie at this point? He's already serving the time. He's never lied to me before, even when he did stupid things. What makes you think he's lying? Because a couple cops have a different story? You don't even know them. Okay, Madeline said. She could see what he was saying. It's a really terrible story. I'm sorry about your cousin, but what does this have to do with the skim? Okay, I'm almost to that. So my cousin, when he gets out, he won't have any money. He'll be worse off than he was going in, and what's going to happen? Well, he tries to join the military, but they won't take him because of his record. He doesn't have a car, so he can't leave the neighborhood very easily. He's taking the bus to work on the other side of town. Can't afford to live there, so he's taking the bus 2 hours each way to work, where he gets just enough money to stay in debt. His kid gets sick, so he takes out a payday loan. His mom dies. He can't pay for the funeral, but he has to get the cash somehow. Starts all over again. He's got to make the decision. Is he going to work inside the system and suffer, or gamble on breaking the law to get ahead? His kid, he's just going to inherit the same thing. Well, if he just works hard, Darius slapped the back of his hand into his palm. No, Mads, no. He's working harder than your dad. 50-hour weeks plus 28 hours of travel. I'm not saying he can't get out. People do. You asked why the skim would agree to the deal. It's the wrong question. The question is, how are the Elenil keeping the deal in place? You start following the money and you find the politicians, the prison owners, the lobbyists and corporations. They need more bodies. They need legal slavery. So they write the laws tight. They make sure it's a law that will catch young black men because the young ones are cheaper to take care of in jail. Then they wait for you to slip up. One mistake, and they've got you. That's how it works in the real world. That's how it works here. Madeline felt raw, like Darius was accusing her of something, like she had participated in some way in what he was describing. She felt like they were on two boats that had been lashed together, but he was cutting the ropes. He was headed out to sea, watching her drift away. Darius crossed to the aisle and came back with the sword. He unwrapped it and put it in Madeline's hands. The worn pommel, the chipped and rusted blade. The only way it could look more pitiful would be if the blade was broken. The sword of years, she said. 500 years ago, there was a battle, Darius said. The skim and the Elenil were at war. All the men, in those days only the skim men fought, had gone out to battle dressed in their war skins. They had left behind a small city called Septil. The Elenil had fought the skim warriors and been forced to a draw. The skim offered to make a peace treaty, and the Elenil also agreed. They met to discuss the treaty, but one of the Elenil captains snuck away with his soldiers and came upon the city. During the peace negotiations, the Elenil were scouting out the skim land at the same time? Yes. Septil was filled with women and children and elderly men. They saw the war party come to the gates. The skim people debated whether the Elenil might be there with peaceful intentions. They had received messenger birds saying the peace talks had begun. Others were skeptical. They had few weapons in the city, but there was one sword, rusted and nicked and half useless. The old men put a blood spell on it. The sword would be harmless except against those who harmed the skim. If the sword found people who had harmed the skim or gained from their harm, it would not be sheathed until it had spilled their blood, all of it. Madeline turned the sword over in her hands. It didn't seem magic. It seemed like an old, broken piece of junk. What happened? They let the Elenil in. The Elenil began to slaughter the people. They thought they would leave a parting gift for the skim warriors who would return home from their peace talks to find their families butchered. But a child picked up the sword, and when he pulled it from the scabbard, it became sharp, shiny, new. It drank the blood of the Elenil, and that one child defeated the entire war party. They retreated. 500 years, he had said. This sword was older than the United States. How strange. The bitterness between the skim and the Elenil ran deep and ancient. The Knight of the Mirror said not to sheathe the sword. He said it was dangerous. Darius laughed bitterly. To the Elenil. The sword still fulfills its calling. It spills the blood of those who would oppress the skim. It is patient and will wait centuries to exact its revenge. That is why it's called the Sword of Years. A horn blew, clear and cold as the moon. Darius scrambled to his feet. What is it? Madeline's hand closed instinctively around the sword's handle. The Elenil, Darius said. He threw the canvas to her. Cover the sword. Farah and Inrif, those are Yenel's parents, burst from their hovel just as Darius pulled his helmet on. Are they near? Farah cried. Madeline will protect you, the Black Skull said, climbing onto his owl. I must warn the elders. Then to Madeline, I leave the sword to you, Mads. Do what you think is right. To Madeline's astonishment, the couple didn't ask how she would protect them. They wished the Black Skull a safe journey and returned inside. She followed, carrying the wrapped sword under her arm. Yenel moaned. She had fallen asleep. Her breathing came in short, raspy breaths. Inreef bolted the door, and Farah lifted squares of wood over the windows, barricading them in. The tiny hut felt claustrophobic now, and the smoke from the fire burned Madeline's eyes. Inreef and Farah tried to hide their curiosity about the package, but their eyes drifted toward it over and over. Madeline placed it on the table, trying to be quiet, so as not to wake Yenel. She unwrapped the sword. Farah gasped. Inreef hissed through his teeth. The Sword of Years, Madeline said. Inreef hurriedly threw the canvas over the sword and wrapped it tightly. The sword of 10,000 sorrows, he said. The sword of pain, blood spiller, the strife of generations. Farah placed a hand on Madeline's arm. It has many names. We are simple people, miss. We do not go on blood feuds with Elenil lords. Take my advice, Inreef said. Do not use this sword, nor give it to any who would. Why? This is one of the artifacts of the skim, made with skim magic. She pushed the wrapped sword across the tiny table. You should have it. Inreef held up his hands as if to ward off a blow. Do not offer that foul thing to me again. It is a curse, miss. A curse. Whether you meet its point or its hilt. Farah didn't look at the bundle. My husband speaks truth. Some skim would have it returned to us. Others would have it destroyed, if such a thing were possible. Madeline didn't understand. What should I do with it then? Throw it in the sea, Farah said. Return it to the Elenil, Inreef said bitterly. Let them keep the cursed thing within their own walls. May the peasant king take pity on them when it is unsheathed. A bright light blasted through the planks on the windows. Beams of summer sunlight lit the room. When the light hit them, Farah and Inreef both twisted away, letting their arms and legs swell and grow. Tusks jutted from their faces, and their lean bodies grew heavily muscled. War skin. That's what they called it. They looked like monsters. They looked like breakbones. Madeline couldn't help but recoil. Yenel neither woke nor changed. Farah cried out in her new guttural voice and held Yenel to her chest. She does not put on her war skin, husband. Madeline crossed to them. What does that mean? It means, Inreef said, walking to the door, that our sweet child is nearing the end of her illness. Her war skin should protect her when the light threatens, even when she is not conscious. This is dire news indeed. Our sweet child, Farah wailed. Only yesterday she laughed and sang. Only yesterday she ran about the neighborhood and played with the other children. Yesterday. Because of the festival of the turning. Because Madeline had not been stealing her breath. Madeline's tattoo burned. A knock on the door nearly shook it from its frame. Inreef opened the door carefully. Outside stood the Elenil. No humans, no Megrim, nothing, no one but the Elenil. They were dressed for war. Silver helmets, an army of shields. Swords like polished moonlight. Wait! Madeline shouted. She ran to the door. I am of the Elenil. These people are under my protection. The first blade went through Inreef's chest. He fell forward, his heavy war-skin body knocking the Elenil soldier back. Madeline stared in horror. Farah slammed the door, wincing against the light outside. The immediate thumping against the door moved Madeline to action. She snatched up the Sword of Years, uncovering it. No! Farah hissed. The back wall! Dig! But with the sword. And if you fail, they will only kill more skim. They will say we fought against them. Madeline fell beside the wall and dug with her hands. The dirt was packed and hard. She used the sword to break into it, and it crumbled beneath the blade. The door shivered, and the Elenil shouted for them to open it. Farah leaned against the door, grunting each time the Elenil smashed into it. Take Yenel, she whispered, her voice a passionate plea. Come with us, Madeline said. The hole is not large enough, Farah said, tears falling. I can dig faster. As if in answer, the door buckled. Farah shouted and smashed it back. Go! Madeline scooped up Yenel. She weighed almost nothing. Yenel stirred but did not wake. Madeline wiggled out through the hole first. The Elenil were on the other side of the hut, light hovering over them, coming from tiny floating orbs of sunlight. They didn't see her. She reached inside and took hold of Yenel's hands, dragging her through the hole. She hoisted the child in her arms and ran. She ran until she could no longer see the light, letting the darkness fold over her, envelop her. Yenel's breathing came harder while Madeline ran. They fell together into the dirt. Noises of battle came from the direction of the hut. Farah screamed, and there was the sound of metal on stone. Shouts, distant in the darkness. Then silence. No more screams. No sounds of battle. Tears burst from Madeline's eyes. Yenel leaned against her, still asleep, and struggling for breath, she said, Mother, I am cold. Madeline wrapped her arms around her. They were in a sickly garden. Orderly rows of malnourished plants lay crushed between them. Madeline listened to the harsh, labored breathing of the girl in her arms. She could feel the pulsing connection of their tattoos. She sobbed and held the girl tighter. Oh, sweet lamb, don't you cry now. An old woman sat beside her, a floral hat on her head, her gray hair like the straws of a broom. I'm not saying it isn't sad, dear, but this isn't the time for tears. Not yet. It was the garden lady, the one who had met her in her mother's garden 1,000,000 years ago. They killed Farah and Inreef, Madeline said. The old lady nodded. They will kill that sweet girl you're holding too, should they find her. She rearranged herself and smoothed her skirt. You have 3 favors yet, dear. If I can help, only ask the question. Madeline wiped her face. Can you get us somewhere safe? Westwind. Not all the way to Westwind, dear. There's no garden there for us to enter, but close. Close enough. Do you agree this will be your first favor, leaving you with only 2 more? Lights were coming toward them. The sunlight bounced and shone across the garbage and refuse of the wasted lands. Elenil soldiers, resplendent in the reflected sunlight, made their way toward Madeline's hiding spot like living mirrors. Yes, she said. Yes, quickly. Close your eyes, the old lady said. She did. Sunlight hit her face, and for one panicked moment she thought the Elenil had found her. Birds sang around her. They were in a lush, green garden in the shadow of the Archon's palace. An Elenil couple stood a few yards away, surprised by the sudden appearance of the human and the skim girl. Madeline said nothing. Being this close to the Archon filled her with panic. She lifted Yenil and trotted away from the garden toward Westwind and, she hoped, safety. The end of chapter 33. Chapter 34 coming on Monday. The lightly titled An End to Hope. That's where we'll pick up Monday. That should be fun. It is a Jason chapter, so don't worry. There's some laughs. Tomorrow, don't forget, we will have with us my buddy, Lindsay Franklin, author of The Story Hunter, which is book 3 in the Weaver trilogy. Think you will enjoy that. Let's take a quick look at your comments here. I think a couple came in. Let's see. Hannah said, I've enjoyed this book so much. I was wondering if you will write more fictional books after you are done writing this series. Absolutely, Hannah. I love writing novels. It is actually my favorite thing to write. And I'm working on a screenplay right now for a movie. And I have a buddy who's working on a TV show, so I might be doing some work for him, possibly. But doing another novel is always in the back of my head. And I really, really have been enjoying writing kind of this type of novel, young adult, fantasy, science fiction. So we'll see. But for sure, I have a lot of ideas and a lot of things I want to write. So would love to do more. Kirk says, this is honestly one of my favorite chapters, such an important chapter. It is. It's, I think it's really helpful to see that Darius has a natural affinity for the skim because of his own lived experience, right? As a Black person in the United States. And that he understands without even thinking about it, some of what's happening there, things that Madeline is struggling to see well. I think that's an important thing, and that's an important reality in our own friendships with people, right? So that's I think it's an important moment for sure. And of course, Yenil becomes a really key player in what's to come in this book, as well as in the next. So she's an important character. Caitlin says, if Jason gets a pudding cup every day, who loses pudding? That's a great question. Jason says multiple times that it's hospital pudding. So I have to assume that there's a hospital somewhere that they keep going like, how are we going through pudding so fast? Just seems like every day there's a little less than there should be. And they're right. There is, because Jason is off there enjoying it somewhere in the sunlit lands. I'll tell you guys this real quick. At one point, there's a couple standalone Sunlit Land stories. So one of them you can find for free it's on Amazon. It's called Our Last Christmas Together. It's a Christmas story set during the Crescent Stone. In fact, we're past that point in the book, so there's no spoilers if you want to pick it up and read it now. And then I have another one that's coming relatively soon here. That is about Jason and some adventures he has after the second book. But I almost wrote a short story about Hanali wanting to throw this big party. And he said, I want it to be something really special. And he says to Jason, I want some of that delightful pudding that you get. And Jason's like, oh, how am I going to get? I'm not going to save up all my pudding for your party. And so Hanali sends him back to Earth to a small town in the middle of nowhere, not near his parents, right? Sends him somewhere where he doesn't know anybody to collect pudding. He doesn't give him money. He just drops him off in the middle of nowhere and says, "Ah, yes, Jason, please return when you have achieved 200 servings of pudding." So that was a story I was going to work on. I was pretty excited about. I just thought it was funny, but I never did it. But who knows? One day might still do it. It's always fun to write Jason, and the words that are connected to him go fast. Okay, so don't forget tomorrow, talking to Lindsay. Tyndale. Oh, yeah, Tyndale is taking orders and sending books right now, and the paperback books are only $8. So if you're looking for something for a birthday present, or you want to save it to give to someone later, or you just need a copy at your house, $8. You really can't beat that. That's half price. I think you have to order $25 worth of books to get free shipping. I'm not sure that's the correct number, but there's a bunch of other great books that Tyndale does. Or if you just want to buy several copies of some of my books, they have that book. They have The Heartwood Crown, and I think they still have some copies of my first novel, which is My Imaginary Jesus. And there's a bunch of other wonderful authors there as well. The Crescent Stone is also available on audio, of course, at oasisaudio.com. And don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. And and one more question. I'll answer this, and then we'll go on our way. What company are you going to pitch your screenplay to, if you don't mind me asking? I actually have a small media company that I had a connection to who reached out to me, and I'm helping them with a screenplay for a movie they're already planning. So I'm not pitching it to anybody. I'm working with them on their screenplay. So yeah, it's been super fun. It's my first official work in a screenplay world, which is a lot of fun. So, all right, my friends, I will see you tomorrow. Have a great day. Be safe. Keep those masks on if you're out in public, and I will talk to you tomorrow.